Now that we've taken a look at the brand new commanders from the Jumpstart product, it's time to take a look at some of the other new cards that we could potentially use in the 99. What's up, Commander players? My name's Matt and you're watching Top Commander. So in my last video I went over the brand new legendaries coming out of the upcoming product Jumpstart. This go around it's going to be a little bit different because there's a lot of big reprints that were coming in this product. So I'm going to do a separate video coming up later talking about the reprints, but today is going to be the newer cards that we could potentially use in the 99 of the deck. But before I get into that, if you wish to support this channel, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if you wish to support this channel directly, be sure to visit patreon.com/topcommander. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, @MattWallace19, be sure to check it out. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get right into it. Now, the whole thing with the Jumpstart product is a lot of the cards coming in this are mostly reprints. It's essentially almost another core set with a handful of new cards. But that doesn't mean that we can't bring something new into the game with these. So, let's go ahead and start off with Blessed Sanctuary. 3 generic and 2 white for an enchantment. Prevent all non-combat damage that would be dealt to you and creatures you control. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/2 white unicorn creature token. Okay, so this was clearly designed for like a unicorn tribal deck, but it's also a partial fog that protects you and your creatures at all times, but it only prevents non-combat damage, so if somebody's trying to fireball you or something like that. Which, honestly, you don't see a whole lot of in Commander. I guess it depends on your playgroup. But the part that I like about this is whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, you get a 2/2 white unicorn. So there are still decks that can use that, especially aristocrat-style decks. When you're constantly bringing a creature into play, you get a 2/2 unicorn, sack the creature, bring it back, and it just kind of helps with a swarm tactic or just a token strategy in general. So I do like this card. Seems a little high for what it's wanting to do though, but I guess the 5 mana is also paying for the partial fog effect on it. But I don't see a whole lot of non-combat damage unless you're facing off against a different kind of aristocrat style deck, but most of them use Zulaport Cutthroat where it's loss of life and not damage. So I like it. I'm on the fence on this one. This is actually, I like the flavor of the artwork. I like the unicorn tokens. I'm cool with this, except as far as, I guess it depends on the power level of the play group, because there are better token generators that cost way less. But let me know what you guys think, and let's go on to the next one. So the next one is Steel Plume Marshal. Sorry. 3 generic and 2 white for a 3/3 creature bird soldier with flying. When Steel Plume Marshal attacks other attacking whenever he attacks, other attacking creatures you control with flying get +2/+2 until end of turn. Okay, so there's another white flyer. It cares about flyers. There's a lot of people that have like this flying tribal, bird tribal matters kind of a deck. So this could definitely go in that. And it's not necessarily the worst card because it gives all of your other flyers +2/+2 when you're attacking. So this isn't necessarily bad, although there are better Anthem effects that cost less. And especially because this Anthem effect from him only triggers on attack. So you kind of have to jump through a couple of hoops. But being in white, it's not that hard to do. White has a lot of cards to give creatures indestructible, so like I said, it's not the worst. I'm not particularly thrilled about it. I don't really have a deck that cares about flying tribal matters, so this doesn't excite me personally. But for anybody running bird tribal or just flying tribal decks that happen to be in white, this could potentially be a card for you. Alright, the next card, this one was a common. I pulled this one up because I love this artwork. It's Archaeomancer. 2 generic and a blue for a 2/3 creature human wizard. When it enters the battlefield, return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. Now, prior to this card, a lot of the creatures with ETB get an artifact out of your graveyard were Trusty Pack Beast, and there was another one, I believe it was called Treasure Hunter. It was a really old one. So there are 3 mana creatures that give you an artifact out of the graveyard. This one was really the big first for me where I saw a blue creature with an ETB get an artifact back, because I immediately thought it was going to be a 3-cast Archaeomancer, but when I read it, I realized it was not Archaeomancer at all. It wasn't anything like that. It was bring back an artifact. So I was like, okay, cool. This is pretty neat. I like the artwork. So if you're in blue, you have an ATB creature that gets back artifacts. Now, the cool thing with it being in blue is you can combine this with Conjurer's Closet or Thassa Deep Dwelling or any kind of a flicker effect to constantly bring back an artifact. So for any combo players out there, you have a target that you could constantly bring back a Lotus Petal if you wanted to go with that kind of a direction. I could see somebody using something to abuse that, obviously, as they normally do. But I basically pulled this one up because the artwork is just really nice, and I'm also a big artifact player in general. But, on to the next one. We have Corsair Captain. 2 generic and a blue for a 2/2 creature human pirate. When Corsair Captain enters the battlefield, create a treasure token. And other pirates you control get +1/+1. So, this one's kind of obvious. If you have a pirate-themed deck, it's an Anthem effect for you. He also ETBs and gives you treasure, so there's a lot of treasure stuff that pirates tend to do. This is just another Anthem for pirates. So if you have that pirate deck laying around, you have a new one to put in. This one it's too narrow. It's obviously, this card is obvious it needs to go in a deck that has a good amount of pirate synergies in it. But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So let's go on to the next one. Scholar of the Lost Trove. 5 generic and 2 blue for a 5/5 Sphinx creature. Flying. Okay. Enters the battlefield. You may cast target instant or sorcery or artifact from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If an instant or sorcery cast this way would be put into your graveyard this turn, exile it instead. Okay. So, this immediately makes me think of a slightly better / worse version of Torrential Gearhulk. So, the big difference though, the part that I don't like about this, if you're able to get instants and sorceries out, why not let this thing get flash? Or at least have a clause where you can cast it, if you cast this at flash speed, you can cast an instant or sorcery, but not an artifact. Or something along those lines. I want to like this card, I really do. But the ETB trigger, you can cast one from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. That's actually not bad. but it's not the best. And at 7 mana, you probably need to be doing... It kind of reminds me of Diluvian Primordial. You need to be doing something better with your mana when you get to your 7 drops. Because most commander decks don't have a lot of 7 drops in them. So I could see this one being played at more casual tables. It's okay. it's not the best. It's more of a casual fun card to play around if you have a play group that has a very low power level, sure, go for it. But I don't see this being used in any kind of higher powered play group or anything like that. It just seems good. So the next one. Which of the Moors? 3 generic and 2 black for a 4/4 creature human warlock. This artwork actually looks pretty sick. It has Death Touch, and at the beginning of your end step, if you gained life this turn, each opponent sacks a creature, and you return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Okay, so as if we needed more cards for the strategy, this definitely sounds very aristocracy. Particularly if you're running anything like Blood Artist, Zulaport Cutthroat, Cruel Celebrant, Corpse Knight. Well, actually, Corpse Knight does not gain you life. But any of the black, white, even if you're in Mardu, there's a whole Mardu deck that can do this. But black and white, any kind of creatures that have like sack a creature whenever one of your creature dies or something, opponent loses 1, you gain 1. Any kind of cards like that, this is definitely a card for that kind of deck. Because if you have Zulaport Cutthroat out, maybe you're producing tokens. So you sack a token with a Dictate of Erebos or Grave Pact on the field, right? So you sack the token, now Dictate triggers, each of them have to sack a creature. Zulaport triggers, each creature that died, each opponent loses 1 and you gain 1 for each of those creatures. And then at the end step, if you have Witch of the Moors on the field, you gained life this turn, so each opponent then has to sack a creature, and you can take a creature from your graveyard and put it into your hand. So, yeah, this is absolutely a card that would go in an aristocrat-style deck. I don't really think that they needed more pieces for that style of deck. But it's another tool for their belt, because they have plenty to choose from as it is. But I do like this. It definitely goes in one of those kinds of decks. But on to the next one. We have Immolating Gyre. 4 generic and 2 red for a sorcery. Okay. Deals X damage to each creature and planeswalker you don't control, where X is the number of instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard. So, if you've ever noticed in past sets, we usually get a brand new rare mythic that's red that's usually a pretty crappy card. Here's the level of that crap red rare. Take this effect, instead of each creature and planeswalker you don't control, it says something along the lines of dealing up to like 6 damage to target player, or target creature, or target planeswalker, or target creature or planeswalker, and you can maybe get 2 targets out of it. That's what the crap red rare is. This one is a one-sided board clear for creatures and planeswalkers in red. This is the level of Volcanic Vision. I really do like this card. Now, granted, it's very late game because it depends on the number of instants and sorceries in your deck. But if you're in a instants and sorceries matter deck, which there's a lot of those lately, that shouldn't be a huge deal to be able to pull this off. So I do like this card, but it's definitely more of a late game card. And the fact that it's only 6 mana, this is a, I wouldn't say necessarily Cyclonic Rift level. I would compare this more to a Volcanic Vision level one-sided board wipe. And Volcanic Vision is fine. I run Volcanic Vision all the time. So if you get enough instants of sorceries in your graveyard, you're going to use the Immolating Gyre, deal the damage to all of your opponent's stuff, and then you can use Volcanic Vision to get it back and deal another 6 damage to each creature you don't control. It's actually, if I'm not mistaken, Volcanic Vision is each creature and player, or each opponent and each creature you, basically everybody else. And this one will hit the creatures and planeswalkers, so this can very easily just snipe out planeswalkers from the game. So I do like this card. We've actually got a rare mythic that I really, really like. Took them long enough. Alright, let's go to the next one though before I go on a rant about that. Lightning Phoenix is 2 generic and a red for a 2/2 creature Phoenix. Has flying and haste. Lightning Phoenix cannot block. Okay. At the beginning of your end step, if an opponent was dealt 3 or more damage this turn, you may pay a red. If you do, return Lightning Phoenix from your graveyard to the battlefield. I'm trying to... I feel like this has been done before. Unless I'm mistaken, this is not a new card and this is actually a reprint. It sounds like it a little bit. But, okay, so the problem with this card, for Commander, for anything like Standard Modern, yes, this works very well for them. In Commander, I mean, it's a recursive Phoenix for only 1 red. So again, Aristocrat style deck maybe. And it's just a Phoenix that you can keep plopping back out on the field. If you have a Mardu Aristocrat style deck and you use this to bring it back, because remember, you could technically just get 3 damage into your opponent somehow, sack the Lightning Phoenix. If you're in Mardu, you're using that Witch of the Moors. So on the end step, you trigger, they each sack a creature, you put a creature from your grave to your hand, you pay a red if you've dealt 3 damage, and you zap the Phoenix back in. So, I mean, there's a lot that you could do with that. I could see a deck that would use this, but it's very narrow. I feel like it's a very Aristocrat style deck, but not a whole lot of wiggle room for other particular decks to use this. Other than that, it wouldn't really be that good of a card in Commander in general. But let's move on to the next one, which was Allosaurus Shepard. This is probably one of the most wacky cards new cards coming out of Jumpstart. 1 green for a 1/1 creature elf shaman. Allosaurus Shepard can't be countered. Green spells you control can't be countered. 4 generic and 2 green until end of turn. Each elf creature you control has base power and toughness 5/5 and becomes a dinosaur in addition to its other types. So any kind of elf ball, elf tribal deck, especially if you're in mono green elves, now you can drop a card that doesn't get countered, and you have another effect that says that your green spells can't be countered. Now in green, especially in mono green, you could elf ball deck, you can run Gaia's Herald, which is a 2-drop elf that says that creature spells you control can't be countered. And there's a couple of other enchantments and other creatures that say the same thing. That's green's protection from blue, is that it can't be countered for the most part. Now, with this one, all of your green spells cannot be countered, which I believe there's only a handful of cards that say that all of your green spells can't be countered. For the most part, you'll see a lot of like creature spells you control can't be countered. Or in elves, I believe there is an elf that says that elves you control cannot be countered. But this activated ability, each elf you control becomes a 5/5. I want a copy of this to stick this in my Azuri Renegade Leader deck, because his activated ability is Overrun, where it gives all of my creatures +3/+3 and trample. Normally I get him out, and if I don't have enough creatures to swing for lethal at that time, I try to get enough ramp out to activate his ability 2 or 3 times. Now I could just play an Allosaurus Shepard on the field, 6 mana, everything's a 5/5, and then on top of that, Azuri uses his ability, everything gets +3/+3 and trample. So now every elf becomes a 8/8 trampling dinosaur. The flavor on it is just kind of killing me a little bit. I don't know how you just go from elves to dinos, but it's magic, I guess. We'll go with it. But other than that, this is a really good card. I like it. I'm not sure. I know a bunch of people out there are liking this card, but I'm wondering if there's anybody out there that doesn't particularly like this card. And if you're one of those people, be sure to comment down below and tell me what you think about this card, because if you don't really like this card, I'm interested to see why you don't like it. But let's move on to the next one, which is Branching Evolution. 2 generic and a green for an enchantment. If 1 or more +1/+1 counters will be put on a creature you control, twice that many +1/+1 counters are put on that creature instead. So this is on the level of like a doubling season Parallel Lives, but only for, it doesn't do tokens, and it's not any counters, it's only for +1/+1 counters. So this card would obviously go in anything with a +1/+1 counter theme, Hydra Tribal. I don't see a reason why not to put this in a Hydra deck. Agave, Kethril would even enjoy this, because it still puts out +1/+1 counters on top of the keyword ability counters. So yeah, I mean, it's another doubling card, as if we needed more of that in the game. But I mean, that's Wizards for you. We just have to roll with the punches, I guess. But yeah, there's not much else to say about that one. So, next card, Towering Titan. 4 generic and 2 green for a 0/0 creature giant. And this is the green mythic. Well, I guess one of them. I guess there was a couple. Towering Titan enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the total toughness of other creatures you control. Okay. Sacrifice a creature with Defender. There it is. All creatures gain trample until end of turn. Okay, so this sounds like a utility card for a wall deck. So if you are out there and you have a deck dedicated to walls, where you just turn walls into attacking creatures or whatever, or toughness matters, defenders, stuff like that, this is a card that would go for that deck. Other than that, I'm not a huge fan of it, because you can only use half the ability unless you have enough like walls or defenders in the deck. So this is like the green mythic slot here got taken over. It used to be the crap red rare, and it transferred over to the green crap rare this go around. So, I mean, I guess that's fine because green has plenty of powerhouse cards as it is. Doesn't really need any more help, but yeah, this one, that's very, very underwhelming. This is literally specific to a couple of decks that's in green and cares about walls, essentially. So, alright, and the last cards I'm going to talk about, it's actually the cycle that's coming in this set, which is the Thriving Lands. So, there's one for each color. Each of these looks very interesting in the way that they work, because each of them has this line: they all enter the battlefield tapped, and when they enter the battlefield, you choose a color other than whatever color it produces. So like Thriving Bluff produces a red, so when it enters the battlefield, you choose a color other than red. And then whenever you go to tap it, you either tap it for the red or 1 mana of the chosen color. So there's a whole cycle of these. All 5 of them are printed in here. They're each monocolored, technically dual colored. I am not a huge fan of these. I do like the versatility though. They remind me of the Vivid Lands a little bit. Except those dealt with counters, and you can use them for the color of its self or remove a counter and do any color. I mean, I guess if you just don't really have much of a choice, maybe a 5-color deck with a very budget mana base, sure. Just run all 5 of these. I would just say be careful about how many tap lands you're using, because you don't want to be time walked. You don't want your opponents getting too far ahead of you. And just about anybody will tell you that. Just if you run any lands that come into play tapped, just be careful that you don't have too many of them. Because a couple's okay. Like if you're running an EDH deck and you have enough non-basic lands, I tell anybody straight up, run Field of the Dead. It enters the battlefield tapped, sure, but it also produces zombie tokens over time if you have the land ramp for it. And then there's also, like, there's another one. Mirror Pool enters the battlefield tapped, but it does something. So these Thriving Lands, I'm not sure. I guess it depends on how much these are going to end up being. They look like they're all printed at common, so they should be fairly cheap, and these are going to be pretty decent budget alternative lands that enter the battlefield tapped. But like I said, just be careful with how many tap lands you're running, because you don't want to fall too far behind if your opponents get going faster than you. But that's the last of the new cards, so I'm going to go ahead and end it here. So what do you guys think? Was there just not enough new cards? Because, I mean, it was a reprint set, so there wasn't expected to be a whole lot of new cards. Plus, we did get the new legendary creatures from this set. We got a couple of different strategies coming in to this set, which is pretty interesting. Mill's now a keyword. So, let me know down in the comments below what you guys think. Do you like any of the new cards? Do you like the Emulating Gyre as much as I do? Or are kind of on the fence about it? Do you like Allosaurus Shepard? Do you feel like it's overrated? Are you one of those people? Let me know down in the comments below, and I will be sure to see you guys next video.